It is finally time for me to read Black Cake. Hey y'all, if you're new here, my name is Beamy Queen. Today I'm going to be reading Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson. I've been putting this off for a long time, but we're gonna see if it's any good, because typically the books that are turned into TV adaptations are pretty good. So my expectations are already up here. I have not watched the TV show on Hulu. I'm always hesitant to read a book and then watch a TV show or the movie, because we all know what they do to these books when it goes on screen. So obviously going to rate the book itself, and then if you guys want to see me watching the actual series and comparing it to the book, let me know and I will do that in a future video. The book is almost 400 pages, so it is pretty hefty. Let's just get to reading. Let's first get into the cover, because I definitely will judge a book by its cover. I really don't care what anyone says. I like the cover a lot. I think it's really cute. I don't know how it ties into the story though, so that I always do look for, like, how does this cover actually relate to the plot of the book? So that I never really got into, but I did read in bed for most of this vlog, which I normally don't do, but it's okay. Okay, so 30 pages in, and brother and sister pair just met with their mom's lawyer to figure out what she left for them and the specific message that she wanted to give them after her death. So they're listening to the recording and they just found out that they have a sister. So what I'm enjoying about this book so far is that, for one thing, the brother is an ocean scientist, which is like unheard of for Black characters, but also like in real life. So I like that he has a legitimate job and is well renowned in his field. That's super cool. The sister, she actually gives like very much a rich auntie feel. I don't know if she's rich, but she gives me that vibe, because she left home, never returned, started her new life, is in this relationship, kind of, sort of, maybe not really, and this is the first time she's been home in over 8 years. So it kind of gives me that like Christmas Hallmark, like I don't ever go home type of thing. But so far, so good. We've made it to page 85, and I feel like the story is progressing pretty slowly, but I always give a book 100 pages, so we're gonna get to 100 pages. The kids are listening to the tape that their mom left them, and she's telling the story of a woman named Covey who lived on this island, and her mother left her when she was young, and she ended up being raised by her father and falling in love with this guy, even though her best friend, who was a girl, was in love with her. There was like a little love triangle happening, but the present day story isn't moving as fast as I would like. It just seems to be a lot of background about Benny and Byron, who are the brother and sister. So we will give it another 15 pages. On page 120, and I feel like I have reached a part of the book now where I cannot tell you what's gonna happen, because otherwise it would be a spoiler. I will talk about the way the book is written though. What's interesting about this is that it's told in past day and present day. It's kind of written like a thriller, and I actually expect this book to be more of a mystery. So the difference between a mystery and a thriller is, a mystery is where the audience or the reader doesn't know who done it, whereas a thriller, you know who did it, but the people in the story don't know who did it. So the characters are unaware, but the reader is very aware. I just wasn't expecting that. I was expecting it to be a mystery the entire time. However, I am still unsure of how the present day and the past day connects. And I feel like this will either make or break the story, because I've read a few books where the present and past day stories just did not converge at a place where I liked, or just didn't like mesh well. So I'm really hoping that this will mesh well and soon. However, because I kind of already know who did it, I feel like the entire rest of the story is going to be figuring out how those two storylines intervene. I will say it did take a little bit to pick up. So like I said, I'm on page 120, but it is a pretty easy read. It's 400 pages. I'm gonna be at 200 pages tonight, so it's a difficult read. I do like that it's pretty simple. I'm gonna continue and see what my thoughts are in the next like 50 pages. It's only been like 20 pages and the two stories have collided, so I'm really happy that it collided early on, because otherwise I feel like I would have been reading just to figure out who was who. But now we know how the past connects to the present. I'm just confused on where this story is going. Like, yeah, they're trying to figure out who their sister is, but like, what's the juicy part? I don't know. I'm still figuring that out. I will say there are some pretty crazy themes covered in this book, one of them being homophobia, which I've read quite a few Black authored books about homophobia, so I like that people are writing about that. The bounds of poverty and what that means for people living in it. I don't know if I wear that in a way that I really like, but in the present day story, I feel like a lot of it is kind of Hallmark. And I said this before, but the daughter, you know, left for 8 years and she's finally returned because her mom is dead. And then the son, who feel like he's been left behind, but all along he's been like the perfect child. So it kind of is, I don't know, I just can't tell where the story is going right now.
I really thought the book was going to start picking up by this point. Like, I really was like, oh, we're going to get into the meat and potatoes. And I was just so underwhelmed. It did not turn out like I thought it would.
We've made it to part 2, and I have no idea what is going on now. There are brand new characters. What is happening? I finally understand what is happening. Let's get into it. So the story starts out in what it seems to be a mystery, but what it actually is a recap of this woman's life, and this woman is the mother of Byron and Benny, who are her children. So she is telling them through this recording about her life that she literally never told them about. And this woman has done some incredibly crazy, just strange, not strange. She's been involved in a lot of scenarios where things were just out of her control. And it's a story about her navigating trauma, essentially. Whereas I thought it was going to be about the cake. I mean, which it does tie into the cake. I mean, I'm assuming it will tie into the cake at some point. But I thought it was about someone being killed by the cake. That's not what it's about. It is really recounting the life of this woman. There are a ton of themes in this book, but I think the main one is the storytelling aspects, like recounting family history. It really speaks to Black culture because we don't usually like record our family history. A lot of people are still uncovering their family history in this present day and trying to figure out what happened, whether that be, you know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, so on and so forth. So that's what I think the major theme is. Really uncovering specifically generational trauma, or how like trauma has played out in specific people's lives and how that shapes who they become, especially in yoga therapy. What I'm not crazy about is that I am on page 167 and I just got to that. I just came to that conclusion. And you guys know I read a lot of books, so I don't like that it took me this long to really figure out what is happening in this book. I felt like the plot should have been made a little bit more clear. I don't know how the author could have made it a little bit more clear, maybe in the description in the back, but I can't say that I would pick this up on my own. Like, if this were not a popular book, I probably would not have picked this up, to be totally honest, because I like mysteries or thrillers that have like a huge, big, earth-shattering plot in the beginning, and like there's a big problem that we need to solve. Those are my type of books. This is more of like a journey through life type of novel. And those are fine, but they're not novels that I usually go for. I will say it is well written, although I would have liked to get to the plot a lot sooner than 167 pages. So we have made it to part 3, and yet again, there are new characters, which, since I understand all the different changes that have gone on within the same characters, I can tell that this is probably the same character in like another identity change. But I don't have anything notable that stands out to me. I don't know. I can't tell like who the audience is for this book, because maybe it's like an older audience. Not that that would make a huge difference, but this is just like really heavy family storytelling. That's what I'm kind of getting from this. All right, it's the next day and I kept reading some more on page 231. Overall, I don't think I like this book, but I'm gonna get into why. So far, and I'm a little bit more than halfway at this point, this book has so many themes, it's actually overwhelming. So there's homophobia, addiction, the expectations of Black excellence in society, trauma survivors. There's also a little bit of romance. There's a second chance romance, and there's also identity shifts. It's just, it's a lot. It's a lot. I think for a book to have the most impact on its audience, I think the max amount of themes that you should have is 3. Because at this point, I feel like I'm looking at a painting where I just don't know what to look at. I don't know what to focus on because there's just so much going on. And I think the story has way too many topics. It's just kind of overwhelming. If it were stuck to, I don't even know what 3 themes I would choose for this book, because there's just so much going on and it's all layered within itself. I did just realize that this is Charmaine Wilkerson's first novel, so this is a debut novel. And I like to read debut authors. I like to see what new authors are putting out there. I just feel like this is overwhelming and overstimulating. I'm really interested to see what this is like on TV. However, I don't think I would actually watch it just because I don't personally resonate with this book. Even on screen, like different TV shows, there's always like one theme, like one centralized theme, and then there's like 2 sub themes.
if that, because otherwise it becomes confusing for the audience to keep watching. Like, I just feel like I'm reading this puzzle that's like never ending. Like, every single part, which there are multiple parts of this book, there's just a new concept that's being introduced where it should have been introduced in the first 100 pages, if you ask me. Again, these are just my thoughts. I don't think this is a novel I would pick up on my own if it weren't as popular, but it just is a lot to digest. For a book to be enjoyable, at least to me, I think it should be less layered, just less overall. So I'm gonna keep reading to see if this becomes any clearer, but it just seems like every single part that I start reading, there is just more and more and more to uncover. And I also don't feel like within the next 170 pages that it's gonna come to a conclusion. Like, why are we still being introduced new themes and new concepts for like in the second half of the book? I feel like we should be on with the solving part. I also think I just wanted this to be a mystery, and it's not. And that's what I'm most sad about, because I thought this was gonna be a mystery novel of like figuring out who killed who, where I already know who killed who, and I knew it way back in the beginning of the book. So I'm confused, and I'm overwhelmed and overstimulated, and kind of disappointed that this was not what I thought it was going to be. I did start getting frustrated by this book, I'm not even gonna lie. It just did not turn out how I thought it would, and I just had different expectations, and I think it's partially my fault because I had expectations going into the book, where normally any books that I read, I don't have any expectations. I'm just reading the book to see if I like it or not. So that is one caveat to reading popular books, is that you think it's going to be good, or you think it's going to be a certain way because of everyone else's review and opinion. So I think that's why I was the most disappointed in this.
Just finished the book, so let's get into it. Overall, I would say this was not my cup of tea. There were just too many themes going on. I said this earlier in the video, but even as the novel continued, there were still more themes that were introduced. There can't be 17 different takeaway points. There just can't. I will say I was wrong about who I thought was the murderer, so that one did surprise me. So I was like, okay, you know, there was a point of me reading the rest of this book, but honestly, I really don't feel like I would have ever picked this up if it weren't for the Hulu adaptation. Now that I've read the entire book, I can see why this was adapted to Hulu, because I feel like a lot of the Black stories that are being brought to light are all trauma stories. Like, when are we gonna get happy stories? Literally when? And I talked about this in my other video about ins and outs in Black publishing, and also carries over to the media, movies and TV, because every time we get like a Black collection or Black movie or something, it's always about something traumatic. Literally, I just want happy stories. Like, I can totally understand why this was something that Hulu picked up, because people think that Black people want to see Black trauma. I'm so tired of seeing it. I'm so tired of seeing it. And it kind of relates to The Color Purple, the remake that just came out a few weeks ago. That remake has not been doing as well as people had thought it would. And the reason why I think it's not doing well is because people don't want to see Black trauma anymore. Like, why would I want to rewatch The Color Purple, even though the cast is phenomenal? But like, why would I want to rewatch that when I already saw that trauma before? I don't think we're really understanding like what needs to be remade, what needs to be made, and what needs to be put on screen. For a debut novel to be on screen is a huge accomplishment, so I will definitely give her flowers where her flowers are due. I admire that a lot, especially because debut authors very rarely get such big opportunities. I just don't think this book was for me. I really don't. I feel like I wish I were introduced to Charmaine Wilkerson in just a totally different novel. Like, if it was a novel about, I don't know, two Black girls living life, even if it's not like a mystery sort of novel, I feel like I would have had a different take on her writing. But because of the storyline, I feel like I can't really divide her writing style versus her stories. I would like to see another one of her novels. Hopefully it'll be something that's a lot less to take in, that it isn't as heavy and isn't as trauma inducing. But this was just like a really heavy book that I would not read on my own, to be totally honest. There are so many other happy Black stories that I would reach for before I would even reach for this one. So yeah, that's my full review. I can confidently say that I will not be watching the Hulu adaptation of this. I'm not going to put any time into it because, like I said, I don't want to watch Black trauma on screen. I don't want to read about it in books. So I'm glad there are people that do enjoy this novel. And again, I love that Charmaine Wilkerson, being a debut author, did get this type of opportunity and is able to share her writing and her work through this platform. I think that is really cool. I want other Black debut authors and just Black authors in general to be picked up for their work to be on screen. But I feel like there are so many Black authors that we can choose from that are writing happy stories. about Black people because I know they exist. Everything doesn't have to be about Black trauma. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I'm gonna keep it 1,000 with you guys every single time. But if you like this video, or if you like this book and just had a different take on what you thought this book was, or you know, how it read, let me know in the comments, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.